Sometimes life doesn't break us because it hates us. Sometimes it breaks us because it wants to make us into something greater. But most people run away after the very first blow. Then they spend the rest of their lives complaining that fate was unfair to them. Today's story is about a young man who kept running from every challenge until life showed him a truth that changed the way he saw everything. It was evening. A light rain drizzled over the cracked streets of the city. People hurried home before the storm grew stronger. But in the middle of the crowd, one young man stood completely still. His name was Shivam. His face was exhausted, his eyes carried defeat, and his heart held a pain he could no longer explain to anyone. In his hand was an old folder. Inside were rejection letters from countless job interviews. He looked up at the dark sky and whispered, "God, how much longer?" A few years ago, his dreams had been enormous. He wanted to build his own business, give his parents a better life, stand proudly in front of the world. But life had chosen a different path. His business failed, his friends disappeared, and the woman he hoped to marry looked into his eyes one day and said, "I don't see a future with you." Little by little, something inside him began to die. He started running away from every hardship. If a job became difficult, he quit. If he was rejected in an interview, he never applied again. If someone criticized him, he locked himself in his room for days. Soon, he became convinced that life itself was against him. One night as he sat alone in his room, the electricity suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the entire house. Furious, Shivam kicked his chair across the room. "I can't do this anymore!" he shouted. Without thinking, he walked into the rain. He wandered through the empty streets until he reached an old temple on the edge of the city. Outside the temple sat an elderly man. His beard was white, his face was peaceful, his eyes carried an unusual depth. Rain poured over him, yet he remained perfectly calm. Shivam couldn't understand it. He asked angrily, "People fall apart when life gets hard. How can you sit here so peacefully?" The old man smiled gently. Then he asked, "Tell me, who do you think is the weakest person in the world?" Shivam answered without hesitation, "The person who has no money." The old man chuckled softly. "No, my son. The weakest person is the one who runs away from hardship." Shivam fell silent. The old man took a deep breath. "Let me tell you a story. Many years ago, there lived a master sculptor. His statues were so beautiful people traveled from distant lands just to see them. One day, he went into the forest, searching for a perfect stone. Soon, he found a massive rock. He smiled. "This will become a magnificent statue." He lifted his hammer and struck the stone. But the moment the hammer landed, it was as if the stone cried out in pain. "Please don't hit me. It hurts." The sculptor stopped. He thought, "Perhaps this stone cannot bear the pain." So he walked farther into the forest. There he found another stone. He raised his hammer and began carving. The blows were powerful. Day after day the hammer struck again and again. But the stone never complained. It endured every cut, every strike, every painful moment. Weeks later, the sculptor finished his masterpiece, a breathtaking statue of God. He carried it to a nearby village. When the villagers saw it, their eyes filled with wonder. They decided to build a grand temple and place the statue inside. The entire village celebrated. But once the temple was complete, someone said, "We also need a large stone outside the temple to crack coconuts during worship." The sculptor immediately remembered the first stone. He returned to the forest, brought it back, and placed it outside the temple entrance. From that day on, people entered the temple every morning. Inside, they bowed before the beautiful statue. They offered flowers, lit lamps, whispered prayers. But outside, the first stone endured blow after blow as coconuts were smashed against it every single day. The stone that feared the very first blow spent the rest of its life receiving blows. But the stone that endured the pain became worthy of worship. The old man looked directly into Shivam's eyes. Human life is no different. Those who run from hardship keep suffering countless small defeats for the rest of their lives. But those who accept struggle are slowly shaped into people the world eventually respects. Those words pierced Shivam's heart. That night, he returned home. But for the first time in years, he asked himself, "Have I really been running away all this time?" The next morning, He looked into the mirror. His face still showed exhaustion, but in his eyes, a small spark had returned. He made a decision. No more running.
That very day, he started applying for jobs again. He was rejected many times, but this time he didn't fall apart. Instead, he told himself, learn, improve, try again.
Slowly, he began changing his habits. He woke up early, learned new skills, faced the fears he had avoided for years.
A few weeks later, his father's health suddenly worsened. The family's financial situation became even harder. Once he had dreamed of building a business. Now he was simply trying to keep his family afloat. For a moment, he felt himself breaking again. Then he remembered the old man's story. The stone that feared the first blow spent its life receiving them.
The next morning, he accepted a job in a warehouse. The work was exhausting. The pay was low, but for the first time he stopped complaining. Every day he repeated one sentence to himself: don't run. Little by little, something changed inside him. His confidence returned. The warehouse owner noticed. While everyone avoided difficult tasks, Shivam always volunteered. One day, the owner called him into his office. "Why do you always step forward when everyone else steps back?" Shivam smiled. "Because I spent years running from every difficulty and it ruined my life." The owner studied him for a long moment. Then he said, "I'm starting a new company. I need people who don't run when things get hard." For the first time in years, Shivam felt as though life was giving him another chance. Time passed. He worked with everything he had. Where fear once made him retreat, he now stood his ground. Slowly, his life began to change. But the greatest change wasn't in his bank account. It was inside him. He was no longer afraid of hardship. A few months later, he returned to the old temple. But the elderly man was nowhere to be found. He searched everywhere. Finally, the temple priest asked, "Who are you looking for, my son?" Shivam described the old man. The priest remained silent for a moment. Then he said, "My son, no one like that has ever come here." Shivam sat quietly on the temple steps. He looked toward the sky. Rain began to fall once again.
But this time he didn't run. He stood there smiling, because now he understood. Difficulties don't come to destroy us. They come to shape us into who we were meant to become.
Perhaps your life feels heavy right now. Perhaps you're running from a challenge that you know you need to face.
But remember this: a sculptor can never create a masterpiece from a stone that refuses the very first strike. So don't run from hardship.
Because the pain you're facing today may be shaping you into the person you were born to become.
Until the next story, may your courage grow stronger than your fears.